It's good evening, everyone. Twitch and stopping by. It is on the ground. Some of the stuff put out, either some of the stuff that I do, but also the ladies, what they do at Sublime MTG Altars. Feel free to like and follow, and you can do so by scanning that QR code. And when you do that, you'll come to my link tree, which will feature all the different tabs on the left-hand side, where you could get an idea of what myself and the team are all about. Of course, I support all kinds of communities, not just the Commander community, but the Altars and Terry community as well. And you can find us on any number of different social media outlets. But as you decide to build decks, feel free also to use my TCG Player affiliate link, which will be posted in the chat on Twitch. All right, let's talk more about what's happening today. And we have to continue the advertisements as well. So, as usual, we are trying to do a number of things on the channel, the show. We do a lot of altars, and we support the community of the altars as well. And my wife and her sister, Michiko and Kumiko, continue to do some really great work. And you could follow, as I mentioned previously, by scanning the QR codes shown there. If you have an idea of an altar that needs to be done on a card because you have a character in mind and you feel like the art on the existing card does not meet kind of the visual aesthetic, always consider us for your altering needs. They do a tremendous amount of work, and we've been doing this for close to now 10 years. And as you can see over the past decade, you would notice that we are specializing in mostly anime fan art, reference art, and also highly detailed works. We are going to showcase one of the altars done by Michiko, and I think the client's going to like the work that was done, so we're definitely going to do that. Last but not least, we have the Alliance of Military Magic players. As always, I have to advocate for the military community who play Magic, and you can scan that QR code as well. One of the things that I like to mention with regards to the military community is that we try to connect all kinds of folks all over the world. Doesn't matter of what type of military branch you support or are in. We definitely try to get all those guys and gals on some type of space to play games. Have you served or do you support the military? Like and follow our page as well. We are primarily operating on Facebook, and we'd love to have you. Okay, so what are we doing today? We're going to transition to our overhead mode here. And I mentioned on the Facebook page that we're going to do three things. The first is we're going to highlight the altar of Psylocke on a foil Flusterstorm. And this is for a client who's been a long-standing client of ours, I think over the last 5 to 7 years or so. But we really appreciate their support, and we want to make sure we properly give it the love that it deserves on the channel. And then secondly, we're going to go and talk about my deck tech for Maralen Fae Ascendant. This is probably a little bit late in the game in terms of the lore and eclipsed the Lauren Eclipse set that just came out, and I wanted to showcase that because I finally got the cards that I wanted, and they're in the deck. So we're going to talk about that secondly, and then if you stick around long enough, you'll be able to see how I do playtesting when I don't have time to head over to the LGS or lineup games on Spell Table. So that's the later part of the show. Let's talk now about the first part of the show, which is the altar highlight. And as I mentioned before, if you follow us on any of our different social media platforms, we are Sublime MTG Altars. We've been doing this for a long time. Michiko and Kamiko have definitely improved their skill sets. And, I can't stress it enough, but they are pretty damn good. And so as we're developing the Twitch stream a little bit more, we want to ensure that all the altars that they do, at least in 2026, they get highlighted on the grindstone. So we're doing that here. And let's talk about the altar itself. So I like to kind of bring it very close to the camera, especially the ones that are done in foil, because you can't really enjoy it without knowing the amount of work that goes into it, especially the ones that are done for foils. So right out the gate, this is a highly detailed piece of work. And when you look at this, if you recognize the character is Psylocke from X-Men. And when the client requested this particular reference to be done, it was after, I think it's Psylocke number 4. It's a comic book cover. I think this also is ahead of a lot of the Marvel stuff that Magic is putting out, Wizards of the Coast is going to be putting out. So I hope this was part of some sort of a Marvel themed deck that the client has. The client has requested previous altars in the past, and they're all really awesome references. This one happens to be for Psylocke. Psylocke from the X-Men is a pretty sweet character. Has some really cool abilities. One of the neat features about what Psylocke does is she has some psionic powers. And whenever she activates her psionic powers, there is a very cool neon pink glow that is created from that. And so as far as the foil accenting goes in this card, that's where it stems from, is that we really wanted to show that. And so what other portions of this card are highlighted in foil? So Flusterstorm, I think this is the buy box promo. No, it's not the buy box promo. I think it was part of the retro foil version. I think that came out in Modern Horizons. I remember when Flusterstorm actually came out. It was originally part of, I think, one of the earlier Commander sets. And as the format started getting popular, so that Commander set, I think it was in 2013. It might have been the one for Riku of Two Reflections, 2013 or 2011, I forget. But that card, Flusterstorm, was not available in foil yet. And then over the years, I think one of the Modern Masters sets came out. And then they decided, hey, it's probably a good idea for us to reprint Flusterstorm, because I remember when Flusterstorm in a non-foil copy was about $70 freaking. Thank God they reprinted it, because now it's very much used in CDH, and now you can get it in foil. So good on WotC for recognizing the utility of the card and wanting to reprint it in foil. So that's just a little bit of a background on WotC printing the card, but now that they have it in foil, it's just a perfect card to get altered, right? And clearly, if you're playing CEDH or higher power brackets, definitely bracket 4, maybe a little bit of 3, not likely 2 or 1. You're going to see Flusterstorm being played, and I think this is where it's going to reside in some sort of bracket 4 or a CDH deck. But with the accents here, the highlights on foil, it has a pinkish glow, which is achieved through some of the details here. Of course, you have the eyes of Psylocke. They also have a pinkish glow, which is really cool. And then you have these pinkish butterflies that are also foil. And then Michiko decided it'd be a great idea to highlight the magenta pinkish belt around Psylocke's costume. I think it's amazing. I hope the client's going to be extremely happy with this card. They have been a client of ours for years, and I believe they can continue coming back to us for more of the altars that they need. So looking forward to putting this in the mail. What do you all think about the altar? What's your opinion on the altar? Does the character make sense for Flusterstorm? Was this the right image that was selected? I think it's awesome. I think it's great. That's another thing that we try to do at Sublime MTG Altars is a client says, hey, this is something I'd like done. Is it possible? We critique it. We come back and provide some feedback to the client, and we say, hey, I think that's a really cool idea. We're going to go with it. Michiko likes it. Let's get it done. So we have the ability to communicate and probably make recommendations as to what probably should be done on the card. It turns out the supplied reference already resonated really well with Michiko, and it made sense for her. And it was an easy yes, an easy decision, because we wanted to continue to provide our client of previous years with another altar to add to his collection and or deck. So I forgot to ask the client where or what kind of deck that this card would be put in. I think I need to start asking that in the future, because when we do these highlights, it might actually be a really interesting to understand why the client decided on the card and where it actually is going to live. So yeah, this is a nice little pretty piece. It is going to be going in the mail. But before we do that, the requisite sleeving up of the card, we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And of course, we're going to put it in a perfect fit. And then with the perfect fit, oh yeah, some people ask, why do I put it in a perfect fit that way? Some people put it the other direction. This is honestly the only way you should put it in a perfect fit. So this card is then going to go into our magnetic card holders. And I always put it out there, but these card holders are awesome. If you don't already decide to put it in these, I probably recommend that you do. They are not that expensive. And so, if you're just putting it in a regular top loader, it might look a little bit lame. But if you put it in a magnetic card holder, that says you acknowledge that the card that you're going to put that is being put into, it's valuable. You want to showcase it as a neat, a card that deserves recognition on the table, on the battlefield. So we're going to throw that in there, properly protect it on its way out the door, and then get it in their hands. Get it in their hands so they could put it in a deck. Now, the thing is it's Flusterstorm, so this is not a commander. This actually needs to be put in a deck. So unless the client has several magnetic card holders that he wants to shuffle, which is nigh impossible, then he's just gonna have to put it in a separate, you know, series of deck sleeves. Okay, so we're gonna throw that in there, and then we're good to go. And yeah, that's going out in the mail tomorrow. Hope you all enjoyed that little segment as part of the stream today. And we're gonna now move on to parts 2 and 3. So far, thanks for sticking around. And let's close these 2 pieces out and get into the deck. But before we actually talk about the physical cards, because I like to do that, I like to highlight the actual physicality of the cards and showing it on the stream. Let's go directly to the deck list link. All right. So Maralen Fae Ascendant. Usually, what I like to do is I like to talk about the deck list first. And then kind of the mentality and methodology behind some of the cards and why they're used. So Maralen Fae Ascendant, let's just look at what the card does initially. So the card says, whenever Maralen or another elf or fairy you control enters, exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library. Once each turn, you may cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of elves and fairies you control from among cards exiled with Maralen this turn without paying its mana cost. So I think what's key with this is ensuring that you have several ways to be able to play cards, elves and or fairies, on opponents' turns, because you're only going to be able to have the trigger happen once each turn. So if you can play an elf or a fairy on your opponent's turns, you know, you'll be able to benefit off of that. Now the nice thing about what that ability is, right, is you don't technically need actual fairy or elf cards for it to trigger. You just need to have an elf or fairy enter. So that means if you have token generation to put in the deck that provides either an elf or fairy, those are the ones that are going to trigger it. But again, you have to keep in mind that only once each turn, you're going to be able to cast a spell of mana value less than or equal to the number of elves and fairies. So you need to have a way to have a lot of fairies and or elves to be able to benefit off of that. And then also considering that you need certain things that can double up on triggers or take advantage of the mana generation from your creatures that can produce mana, and then some other things. So yeah, that's the gist of that. But we're going to go into some of the eaches, just some highlights. There's 3 planeswalkers. We need to be able to use them for some of their recursion abilities, potentially their draw abilities, or their abilities to act or to allow your mana producers to tap and activate immediately when they come in. There's some funky cards in here, like Asrar, the Archlich, and I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I only threw that in the deck because I've always wanted to play Aluren, and this is kind of a call out back to when I used to play Legacy, and Asrar at the time wasn't part of the Legacy deck, but I think in some versions that exists now, this might be in there because it enables an infinite combo. But if you pair this card with say an Aluren, you could win the game. Again, you're looking for token producers. Alila Cunning Conqueror is one of them. Bitter Bloom Bearer from the new set, Lauren Eclipse, you got to have that. Then you have cards that produce mana, and usually your creatures that are able to produce mana are going to come in the form of elves. And so it might seem like you run out of gas when you're tapping these creatures for mana, and then basically your hand starts to look empty. Because you don't have too much really to play from that. But whenever the ETB happens for Maralen, for the Elves and Faeries, you're going to be able to play cards from other people's decks. Of course, there has to be some interaction. I'm going to explain a little bit more as to some of how the mana package works. But again, as I mentioned, the Elves are the ones that you need to be able to generate mana. And then you have some really cool fairies like Fairy Formation, where if you tap if you activate for 3 colorless and a blue, you can create a blue fairy and then draw a card. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the utility of this, because you could potentially draw your whole deck. This combo is really well with the mana producers that we have, and an enchantment that we all know and love as Intruder Alarm. Great card. Creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps, but whenever a creature comes into play, untap all creatures. So let's say you have mana producers that produce mana, and then that mana can be fed into a fairy formation. Once that blue fairy comes in, all the creatures untap, then you get to draw a card. There are elves in this deck that can produce other than green mana. So we have, for instance, Elves of Deshadow can do black. We have Paradise Druid can tap for blue. And then, of course, one of the other ones that's great for elf decks is a card called, let me see where I can find it, Wirewood Channeler. So it's kind of your version of Priest of Titania or Elvish Archdruid, but instead you can generate X mana of any one color, so you can tap that for blue or black. It doesn't have to just be green. Una, Queen of the Fae, great card. I just want to highlight that because it's a fairy rogue token producer, which is pretty awesome. And then if you have the Intruder Alarm, disgusting mana producing effects and untapping, tapping, then you can just exile an entire opponent's library after playing this card. Of course, you're going to need your way of recursions, Bloodline Bidding. There's also Mikaeus the Unhallowed. So talking through about how to basically protect your creatures in a sense. Or have them come back into play. That's critical, and that will enable the ETBs. What is the draw package for this deck? I think there's about 12 to 13 different cards that allow you to draw. Appearance of the Abyss is pretty amazing. If I had more copies of this, I'd probably put it in more decks. And we'll go through the eaches very soon. And then of course you have the interaction that's involved. You might ask, why is Arcane Denial in here? To be quite honest, I needed a little bit more draw, so this enabled some of the draw, and I feel like the opponent's drawing cards isn't that big of a deal. Partly because we're doing a lot of exiling. That's fine. Then of course we have to be able to respond to threats, so things like Assassin's Trophy are in here. Deadly Rollick. Then I do want to mention Dimir Charm really quickly, and then the card called Hinder, because if there is a neat card that you want to counter and you want to put it on top of the library, that can get exiled after it's being countered as soon as an elf or fairy comes into play, and then you can play that same card. Dimir Charm does something similar, but if you don't choose one of the other modes that is shown on the card, you can instead look at the top 3 cards of target player's library. It could be yours or your opponent's, ideally the opponent's, and then put one back and the rest into that player's graveyard. So it acts a little bit like your typical mill. But if you have a card that you do end up putting back on an opponent's library, you can then exile it to an ETB from Maralen and then play that card. One other thing I want to mention, besides enabling enabling the ability not just the trigger, because it's once each turn. You want to be able to play cards that give the spells you play flash, right? Is Leyline of Anticipation, and then of course your Mask with Nexus, etc. Just to name a few things. I didn't highlight High Fae Trickster, but that is definitely a must in the deck. And then I was about to say, but because you have a lot of these elves and fairies, you might as well take advantage of that. And then your tribal / typal / whatever it is they call now will benefit off of cards that give your creatures bonuses. And so Banner of Kinship, and of course very old school is the Coat of Arms, playing those artifacts so your creatures can get huge buffs. And yeah, we're going to talk about everything else in the deck momentarily. And then, of course, the 33 lands. I'm not really going to go through them line by line here, but we're definitely going to do it when we get to showing the cards themselves. Okay, so I think initially that's helpful enough for you all to think about what kind of deck you want to build with Maralen. I think there's actually 2 cards in here that I didn't quite update on the Moxfield deck list. And you're going to kind of see that I didn't make that adjustment when I go through the deck shortly. Okay. All right. So let's look at the physical cards here. All right, so we got Maralen, Fae Ascendant, and you know, you might wonder, like, okay, how do you decide to build these decks? What do you do? For me, it kind of sort of goes back to if I open it and I pull it from the pack and it's foil, I'm probably going to build it. And so that's a generality that I like to go with is, you know, I like the experience of opening packs. I don't like the experience of opening shitty packs, though. I do, if I find a commander that I'm sort of interested in during the spoiler season, I'll hope that I pull it, and if I do, that just makes sense. And for me, I felt like I needed another deck, you know, blue, black, green, because I have 2 others. I have a Kadena deck, Kadena the Stinking Sorcerer, and then I have a Damia Sage of Stone. Kadena and this deck kind of sort of are very similar, because you really want to get after some of the flash, the cards that can enable flash. Anyway, so we looked at Maralen, the Fae Ascendant. I did pull this from a pack. I said, hell yeah, I want to build this. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. So there isn't really a proper sequence that I follow. Generally, I try to explain the cards as they are, as they pertain to themes or for its intended purposes, etc. So I want to talk first about the typal / tribal theme that you get out of it, right? Because of course you need your elves and fairies to be able to trigger her ability, and then you can play cards from opponents, tops of their libraries, right? So Mask with Nexus is an absolute must. Creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So this enables so much in the deck. And if you play an elf, it's also a fairy. It's also everything else that's under the sun that you could benefit from having in another type that might be on the battlefield, right? So that could be Coat of Arms, things like that. So Mask with Nexus enables that. You can also get a free shapeshifter creature token with Changeling if you tap 3 mana. So you can tap the 3 mana to create the Changeling, and then that triggers Maralen. So that's a free elf or fairy that you could get out of this. Okay. So then, of course, we have Coat of Arms. Awesome card. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature in play of the same creature type. So when this is on the battlefield, it responds to everything that is on the battlefield. So if there are other elves in an opponent's deck, you'll get bonuses for that, but the problem is they get bonuses for that. The neat thing about this card is it really does a good job of giving the anthem on a larger scale for your fairies, which have flying, and then there's a very good chance some of those opponents' battlefields don't have flyers that can block. So your fairies will be able to be huge and large, and they could connect for a lots amount of damage. What really wins you the game with this deck? It's not infinite exiling. It largely depends on creatures attacking, but once you have the Intruder Alarm that I mentioned that is out, you could get enabled infinite mana, infinite whatever it is that you need to be able to exile opponent's deck. But I would say about 7 times out of 10, the deck actually wins through combat damage. Coat of Arms is awesome, but then you want to look at a new card that I think was printed out in what is it, Bloomburrow? Or if it wasn't Bloomburrow, it's definitely one of the special guest cards that you could get. But Banner of Kinship is awesome. Now, this could technically be a dead card in your hand, so you want to play this at the right time. You don't want to play it too early. You want to play it when you have a lot of creatures on the battlefield, but then you have to choose a creature type first. So hopefully you have a Maskwood Nexus, but if you don't, you might already have a lot of elves, which tend to be the case, and then I would say less fairies. Anyway, you choose a creature type, it enters, and then it'll get it'll have a counter that's placed on it, a fellowship counter, and then creatures that you control, the chosen type, get +1/+1 for each of those counters. Okay, now we're moving into the necessity to make your spells have flash. And so that is enabled through a card like Vidalcan Orrery. Great card. A lot of people look at this and they're like, okay, well, 4 colorless kind of sucks. What am I going to gain from it? I mean, you gain so much from this. And it's not just one of those popular cards to begin with, because I know a lot of folks, at least that play in the casual realm, want this because you can hold a mana at any time and then play the cards that you need at the right time. Hopefully this doesn't get removed. But if you're playing this, you can trigger Maralen during an opponent's turn, and then you can cast their cards for free. What's up, boy? Yeah. Okay. High Fae Trickster, it's a fairy. Why not? Does the same type of thing as Vidalcan Orrery. So the neat thing about this card is it's any spells. So sometimes there are cards where it says, oh, you can cast creature spells for as though they had flash. So you might think about like Teferi, for instance, the 2 colorless and 3 blue. I would have put this in that deck if I wanted it, but then I decided I want to benefit a little bit more from the fact that there are cards that exist like this that can cast any kind of spell as though they have flash. So one, it's great because it's fairy. 2, it enables the cards to be played at instant speed. Any card, right? Ley Line of Anticipation, awesome thing to have in your opening hand, and it acts as a Vidalcan Orrery. Also, it's an enchantment, so it's harder to kill. Usually people play out cards that can kill creatures or kill artifacts, but I would say, 7 times out of 10, they probably do not have a good card that they could pull immediately or have access to that can kill enchantments. Okay, so Aluren, we're still talking about things that can force instant speed plays. So this is great. This is awesome. I think I play Aluren in exactly 1 or 2 other decks. I don't remember. I think it might be in my Derevi deck, which I did a deck tech not too long ago, probably last month. But Aluren is great. If you play Legacy Aluren, you know, this is the type of deck you want to put it in. And then you have low casting cost creatures. So this says any player may cast a creature card with total CMC 3 or less whenever he or she can play an instant. So this kind of, it's not one-sided. It does allow your opponents to play creatures that are 3 or less for free. And sometimes it's a detriment, but in the case of Maralen, it can only be beneficial. So be mindful of kind of how you want to work this out. But Aluren, I think, is an amazing card. It's reserve list. If you have it, play it. It's awesome. So I talked about this when we looked at the deck list, but this is one of the non-fairy, non-elf cards in the deck. I threw this in here because I always wanted to play the combo. I've won a few times with it and Aluren, so it's going off. So what happens is, Asrar Re-Rag the Archlich, when it enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, return it to your hand. So what happens is Aluren is in play, you play Asrar Re-Rag, and what you want to do is decide not to go through the Tomb of Annihilation, and you can look up, you know, exactly how that all works online. But essentially, if you go through the dungeons, right? Because what it says is, if you don't complete the Tomb of Annihilation, you return it to your hand, and then venture into the dungeon. So when you venture into the dungeon, there are different modes that you can go through that'll allow you to basically just win the game through either infinite life loss, players losing life. You can draw, you can create treasure tokens, some other things. So you're putting this into play, bouncing it immediately, playing it again, because Aluren allows you to do that for free, and then just keep doing that. So I've always wanted to play this combo. I think for now, this is going to remain in the deck. And this does not fit the theme of Elf, Fairy, Tribal, but it's fine. I'm going to talk about the Planeswalkers next. So I pulled this Oko Loran Liege from my Loran Eclipse collector box. I said, why not? It's not bad. There's some cool things in here, like having creatures gain all creature types, which is in theme with the fact that I want to have Elves and Fairies in play. You may not get an ETB off of it, but you could get a bonus based off of some of those Lord effect Anthem artifacts, right? And the other great thing I like about this card is, once you paid the green at the beginning of your first main phase, you can transform Oko, and then you can get the other modes that are great. -1 is pretty critical, I think, milling 3 cards. And then you could put a permanent card from among them into your hand. And then you could also create tokens. And then also this gives you the -6. When you choose a creature type, you get an emblem. With creatures you control, the chosen type, you get +3/+3. So this also acts as another Lord/Anthem effect for your creatures of the chosen type, right? Most of the time, I don't think we get to a point where I can -6 anyway, but that is an option. Tivar, Jubilant Brawler. So this actually gets played in a lot of CEDH decks. And why that's necessary is because you use its static ability of being able to activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures have haste. So you have creatures that tap for mana. Sometimes you just don't want it to come into play and do nothing. You want it to tap immediately for mana. This allows you to do that, and then you can minus its ability to +1 to untap a creature, and then you could also -2 to do some recursion. And you have so many creatures in the deck that are less than 3 mana anyway, but here it cares about 2 mana, and you can bring those back immediately to the battlefield. So cards like Priest of Titania or whatever, if they get milled, then it isn't even just that the cards that you milled are the ones you choose from. It's just if there's any cards in your graveyard that is 2 or less, it can bring back to the battlefield. Relly Tutor, I threw this in here because it was an avatar card that I did not put in a deck yet, and I wanted to. So search your library for a creature card. Something very similar is your Fauna Shaman. So it's an elf, great thing to use to tap and activate. So you could discard a creature card to get a creature card that you need. Now let's talk about the mana producing package or mana ramp package. Your elves do that primarily. So I would caution against throwing too many non-mana ramp, non-creature mana producing cards in this deck, because if you could do it with your elves, it makes more sense to do it with elves. Elves of Deep Shadow get you your black. Llanowar's Classic get you your green. Paradise Druid is awesome. I think there's obviously other variants of this card. I think originally I might have put there's this other card that was kind of I mean, it's old school. I think it was back in Mirage, whatever. But when it enters the battlefield, you can choose a color and then it can tap for either a green or the chosen color. This one just allows you to tap for 1 mana of any color, and it also has a cool static ability that it will have hexproof unless it's tapped. Devoted Druid, naturally, I pulled this from my Lorne Eclipse box. My Lorne Eclipse box was awesome, by the way. So if you haven't seen that or haven't decided to pull the trigger on Lorne Eclipse, go check out my recently posted video on my Lorne Eclipse collector booster box that I opened. I opened this and I said, okay, another reason why I decided to build Maralen was because I opened this and in addition to Maralen, and I also opened, I think it was a Selfless Safe Right, I think is what it was. So naturally it made sense for me. This one can net you 2 green mana, essentially, until it dies. And that's awesome. Bloom Tender, so I did not pull this. I wish I did, because I ended up just buying a copy of this, and I love Bloom Tender. Bloom Tender is on a lot of my decks. I have original foil Eventide versions. I have other prints that came out that are in foil. I love the art on this. I decided in order for me to complete my Maralen deck, I need to have this, so I ended up buying this recently. But this will generate you, because of its vivid ability, up to basically 3 mana while at least your commander's around. Now you can produce probably up to 5 mana if you have creatures that end up coming into play, or permanents that you end up coming into play on your side from an opponent's deck. So this can net you a lot more mana than you think. It's not just your 3, 2, or 1. You can get your 4 or 5 depending on what you get. Marwyn the Nurturer, natural addition for an elf mana producing style deck. I don't think I did my other elf ball deck yet as a deck tech, but you're going to see similar mana producing elves like this. But your ETBs for elves come in, it increases their power, which increases the amount of green that Marwyn can produce, which is great. Priest of Titania is awesome. You can't have an elf deck without a copy of this in the deck. This will add a green, not just for your elves, but also any other elves that are in play. So that's something a lot of people kind of forget about. So if you have 2 elves, but then your opponent has 5 elves, all of your opponents have 5 elves, this will produce 7 total green mana, which is amazing. Then you have Elfish Archdruid. It costs 1 additional more, and then it also provides a Lord effect by giving other elf creatures you control +1/+1. This is one-sided though, not like Priest of Titania, so you can add 1 green only for the elves that you control. In the same vein as your Priest of Titania, except it costs basically 2 more mana to play. This will net you not just green mana like Priest of Titania, but it'll net you any 1 color of either black or blue that you decide to use. Now, what I want to mention is with Maralen is that you can cast those cards that are exiled without paying their mana cost. So you don't actually have to worry about mana that is being produced by your elves to be able to play the cards that are exiled. Quirion Ranger. This is really great. Now, I have this in my other elf ball deck, but what I want to mention with this is it can easily be replaced by the fairy version called Scrib Sprites. And me being me, I wanted to get a Scrib Sprites because I have multiple copies of Quirion Ranger. but I didn't want it in regular non-foil, and I noticed the price as soon as basically the Fairy Tribal deck started coming out, that it was just a little bit too expensive for me, so I missed the boat on that. It's fine. Korean Ranger does the same thing. Return the forest you control to owner's hand, and you can untap a creature. So really you're untapping those high mana producing elves to be able to generate more mana. So Korean Ranger is pretty much a must in any elf deck. I put this in there because I didn't have script sprites. It's fine. It's great. Now, sometimes your creatures don't quite produce mana because they're fairies or they're elves that are kind of lame because they can't produce mana. Now, the importance of this card, Cryptolith Rite, which has a variant version from Avatar. So you can pull this from an Avatar box. Anyway, it allows to have all your creatures you control to be able to tap and add 1 mana of any color. So if you start running out of gas, or all the creatures that you had that were producing mana are no longer around because they were killed, or maybe there's a toxic deluge, whatever, that removes a lot of creatures from the battlefield. You no longer have them, but now you have other creatures that no longer, when they come into play, they no longer can produce mana. You can have this and then have the mana generation that you need. So I consider that a mana source. Yeah, we were talking, I think, as far as the elves were concerned, we highlighted the mana producing elves. Now we're getting into cards that allow you to produce mana through other various ways. Springleaf Parade, by the way, I pulled this in my Lorna Eclipse box. It's awesome. It says when this creature or when this enchantment enters, create X11 shapeshifter changeling cards. So the key here is changeling, but also key here is that creature tokens you control have add 1 mana of any color. So this isn't quite like your Cryptolith Rite, but it's just another way to be able to produce a lot more mana with the elves and fairies that you have enter the battlefield that are tokens. Okay, so key card in the deck is Intruder Alarm. Intruder Alarm, I mentioned whenever this is an enchantment. It's awesome. Now, the static ability, creatures don't untap during their uncontrolled untap steps. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It might be helpful just depending on, if you want to attack into a board state where all their creatures are tapped. But really, you're looking for the triggered ability as part of the second ability, so that whenever a creature comes in play, untap all creatures. So you play a creature, your mana producing elves or other cards that can produce mana because they can tap. When the next creature comes in play, then it'll untap all creatures, and you can use the mana for those mana producing elves and other creatures to generate even more mana again, and that could be super beneficial, as I mentioned, for a card like Fairy Formation, which I'll show later. I talked about is it appropriate to just use all your mana ramp through creature mana production? Is it necessary to have all that? It may not be, and I include cards like these because I can still get a little bit more out of it due to the benefit that it can provide immediately or through the next turn. So if I'm looking for a land card that I need, for example, Ancient Tomb or Gaia's Cradle, I'm going to use this card, and I don't have enough crop rotations to find cards like that to put it directly into play. So 7 Scrying is just going to have to fit the bill for now. Skystraw Claim, other than the fact that there's an elf on the card, which I think is amazing art, but it also gets you 2 forests, which are great. And of course, you can't have a commander deck without a Soul Ring. There were just a lot of really cool cards in the Avatar set and then Lorna Eclipse that just kind of rolled and blended right into each other. So White Lotus Tile is one of those types of cards from Avatar that at first I was like, oh, I would like to put this in my Elf Ball deck that I have, but why not throw it into another deck? And I just so happened to pull a Maralen, and I didn't have a place for it just yet, so I decided to put it in here. The problem with this is this won't give you the full amount of mana for all the creatures you have on the battlefield, not unless you have like a Masquerade Nexus. What this will do is only give you the maximum amount of mana equal to basically, as you choose the creature type, the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common. So most of the time I'm actually tapping this because I have a lot more elves on the battlefield, and then I can still get 1 mana or X mana of any one color. Dark Ritual, pretty much a must in a lot of your 5-drop commanders, because if it's 3 colors or more, there's a good likelihood you can use Dark Ritual to play Maralen as early as turn 3. And so that's fine. And this also just powers out a lot of other cards, of course. So that's the mana ramp that I have in the deck. There might be some other mana ramp that kind of shows up later, but I wanted to highlight those specifically initially, at least in the discussion here. Now we're going to get into what I put in the deck as far as card draw, right? So card draw, I pulled, this is the buy box promo that came with Lorn Eclipse. Harmonized Crescendo, it's awesome, has Convoke. So you have a lot of blue creatures, a lot of green creatures, and you know, as you play this, you have to decide what creature type you want. Masquerade Nexus is out. That's great. It'll count all of them. But usually, probably what I'm doing is I'm convoking Faeries to be able to play out and draw cards equal to the number of elves, right? So I don't have to convoke Faeries to draw cards equal to Faeries unless they're more. I just choose a creature type and then I get there. Tamiyo, the Moon Sage, is a great card because I have a lot of creatures that tap for mana, and I'm using this primarily to -2 to have Tamiyo allows me to do is draw a card for each tapped creature I control. So if I'm tapping creatures for mana, I can just benefit by them being tapped. I can draw that many cards. Now, if I have Faeries that are attacking, I would benefit probably from another type of draw card, but then I'm still drawing card equal to the number of tapped creatures, and they don't have to just produce mana. They can attack, and I can draw in my post-combat main phase. Bident of Thassa is great. I just want to highlight that, and I think there's at least one other card. Where is it? Yeah. So there's actually 3 cards that are very similar. I'm just going to highlight them all at the same time. So we have Coastal Piracy, Toski Bearer's Secrets, and Bident of Thassa. So it says, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent or to a player, you may draw a card. These 3 cards basically say all the same thing, but they're different names, and one ends up being a creature. The other 2 are enchantments. So you have Faeries that attack, they'll deal combat damage, you get to draw a card, and that's great. The other things that allow me to draw cards in the deck are at least as follows. So you have Baron Rivalry, pretty cool card. Gets you, if you have like lame ass elves or Faeries that don't really do anything, and instead of them just dying, you can play Baron Rivalry, otherwise known as Deadly Dispute. To cast a spell, you need to sacrifice an artifact or a creature, and then you get to draw 2 cards, and then also create a treasure token. So that's mana fixing, as well as card draw. Appearance of the Abyss is great. You're going to be able to produce a lot of mana, and you can do that fairly early. Draw half your deck. You'll still lose a lot amount of life, but you're going to be able to craft your own hand very easily by drawing half your deck. And usually I'm looking for like Intruder Alarm, or I'm looking for Aluren or something, so I could just play out basically whatever it is that I drew. Now, Paradoxical Outcome. It's in this current physical deck but I think I took it out because I'm considering putting 2 other cards in, and I was also considering replacing Brainstorm as well. This paradoxical outcome, it's great only if you want to protect your creatures from going to the graveyard. You can return them to your hand, and then play them later, which will enable your Maralen to have its ETBs. But I'm considering, I think I consider taking this out because there are rare cases where it might actually make sense to return your creatures or the things that you want prevented from being destroyed. Anyway, I think 13 organic draw cards in this deck, things that allow me to draw, and this is one of them. If I took out 2, I was doing it for these particular 2 cards. I think everyone generally knows what Brainstorm does, but I'm not exactly a fan of Brainstorm in random decks unless it's necessary. I'm not manipulating an opponent's deck using this card. I'm only manipulating my deck, and I don't really need to do that if I have another way I can draw cards that could be better. Great in Legacy, cool art. I'm not sure this is exactly the home for now. It's in there. Staff of Eden is actually really cool. So I have this in my collection. I've always wanted to figure out how it's going to play out in a deck, and this ended up being a natural slot to fill, and with this it made sense. So when it enters, you get to put target legendary permanent. So it doesn't have to be a creature. It could be any legendary permanent from a graveyard onto the battlefield. So let's say you had a Gaia's Cradle in your graveyard. You could put it onto the battlefield, and then that counts as that. Or you could have a creature, legendary creature, on an opponent's side that is in their yard, and then just put it in. Now the great thing about this, because we're still talking about draw, is when you tap this, you can draw a card for each permanent you control but don't own. Now with Maralen, remember what Maralen does is once each turn you can exile the top 2 cards, or you can play cards from cards that were exiled from her triggered ability once each turn. Now if they happen to be permanents, Staff of Eden will be able to draw you a card for each permanent you control but don't own. So let's say you had a flashy effect, maybe you had Aluren, maybe you had Leyline of Anticipation, and you play out your Faeries and Elves during each of your opponent's turn. By the time it gets to you, and you have like 4 permanents from your opponents, by the time it circles back to you, you could easily draw 4 cards just right off that one turn cycle. And then you can draw more when you have multiple turn cycles while this is in play. Okay. Continuing on with the draw package, but now we're looking at creatures that can enable that. You have Fairy Mastermind, great, because it has Flash. 2, it's a Fairy. 3, you can draw your card. Now the cool thing is you have to look at the trigger, and so this happens for an opponent, right? So whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. So assuming you have more than one opponent, and you have this activation happening, and you maybe do it twice, what you end up getting is 2 cards, not just for you. It'll be 2 cards for them, but you get an additional card for them drawing those 2 cards. So you essentially net, I think it's a total of 5 cards off of 8 mana. And does that matter when you need it? It probably will. Great card. I was looking for this in foil. For some reason, TCG Player did not have it in foil, and I didn't know why. I thought this was the normal Eldraine symbol. I might need to look for it again. But I want this in foil because, as I mentioned before, if you paid 3 colors and a blue, kind of like your Fairy Mastermind, but instead it costs 5 instead of 2, you get to not only create a blue fairy, but you get to draw a card. And so when that fairy comes in, if there's an Intruder Alarm, you basically get to draw your entire deck, play out as many cards as you can between the creatures that can produce mana, and then go from there. Now let's talk about things like interaction, counter magic, etc. Spell Stutter Sprite is great for that, for your counter magic. Counts the number of fairies that you control and when it ETBs and counters a spell with converted mana cost X or less. So that's kind of key in there, is understanding that it has to be X or less. It's not pay X or pay an additional X, right? It'll just counter that spell that's X or less. Now, you may not even need to use this to counter something. Instead, you may just need it to flash in and then have that ETB trigger from Maralen. Glen Alendra Archmage, pay a blue, sacrifice it, then it comes back due to persist. You get to counter 2 non-creature spells as long as you have this in play by paying basically 1 blue each time. And then, of course, if you saw my stream, I pulled this on my stream. I was ecstatic about it, but as usual, all cards that are of a unique print will always lose a shit ton of value. So I think at the time of opening, Glen Alendra Guardian, which is basically your opposite version of, it's your like ugly stepsister to Glen Alendra Archmage. You can flash this in, which is a bonus that the Archmage doesn't have. But then if you remove the counter that's on it, you get to counter a non-creature spell, and then its controller draws a card. So ugly stepsister, not the art, not the print. In this case, I pulled it at the time. It was $250. I think it's down to like 90, maybe even less now. I don't care. I like to think that at the time of opening the box, I was super hyped about it, and the value was cool. Lesson learned: if it's not the super rare key cards that are in that kind of cool print, they're probably not going to retain that much value. It's fine. Arcane Nile, just another counter magic, allows you to draw cards. Hinder, I mentioned, is really cool because you can manipulate basically the top card of an opponent's library after you counter the spell. You'd be able to benefit off of a Maralen trigger. Dimir Charm, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty much the same thing, but you could also still do some of the one of the other 2 modes of either countering a sorcery spell or destroying a creature of power 2 or less. But really what I'm looking for is using the third ability, which is look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, then put 1 back and the rest into that player's graveyard. Olbira is really cool. So now we're getting into just kind of the rest of the deck in terms of creatures and what they can do and that you can benefit from. This plus Fairy Formation plus Mana Producers plus Intruder Alarm. Basically, if you don't already win through drawing a lot of your deck, you're just going to win through having fairies enter the battlefield. So whenever that happens, each opponent loses a life. Cloud of Fairies, I think I just pulled this out from my uncommon box that has a lot of really great playables. This is great because it's basically a free fairy. You get to untap 2 lands. So if you had like a Gaia's Cradle or a 3-tree city, you can untap those lands and then net you a lot more mana, which is really cool. Awaken the Honored Dead, so some of the interaction that you can see here. Sultai colors made sense to me. When I milled 3 cards, not that big of a deal because I could still probably do some recursion with the cards that were milled later. And then the third ability is just another great ability, but usually I'm wanting to use this to kill something immediately, which is enabled by the first chapter. A little bit more again on interaction. So Assassin's Trophy is great. It's any permanent, but it will give your opponent a free basic land. Debatable as to whether or not this is great. It's not Abrupt Decay. It's because Abrupt Decay might be more relevant in CDH. This is not a CDH, by the way. CDH deck, by the way, it's more of a bracket 4. I would say a low bracket 4, maybe a high bracket 3. But I like Assassin's Trophy. It's cool. When I think of fairies and blue and black and Dimir, even though this is Golgari, I think of assassins. So that's a cool card. Deli Rollick, Now the thing I want to mention about these free spells like Deadly Rollick and then even Deflecting Swat and whatever is this is probably great to have, because by the time you play out your 5 mana cost commander, you're going to be tapped out on lands, and it's awesome to just play as a gotcha spell. So exile a creature, and it's free if you control a commander. There is a somewhat sub-theme of Final Fantasy commander cards that are in this deck, and they come in the form of reprinted cards with different names like this. For instance, it's Cyclonic Rift. Instead, it's Hope's Arrow Magic. It's in the deck. I have Cyclonic Rift and a lot of other decks. But because it had a Final Fantasy art, I decided to throw it in this deck. That's fine. Anyway, Cyclonic Rift is just awesome in general. You overload by paying 7 mana instead of 2. If you have the mana, return all non-land permanents to the owner's hands. I'm sorry, that I don't control. And we have cards that can destroy artifacts and enchantments, like your Reclamation Sage and the Chomping Changeling. So, of course, the Changeling Shapeshifter card is great. Again, this is one of the cards I pulled from Lore and Eclipse, so it made sense. High Perfect Morcant. Now we're getting into creature token creation. And this is just one of the things that takes advantage of the elves that enter the battlefield. So I pulled this also from my box. And what High Perfect Morcant does is whenever it or another elf I control enters, each opponent blights 1. So what Blight 1 does is it puts a -1/-1 counter on creatures they control. So if you have a lot of elves come into play, you basically wipe the board with their creatures, and then you can proliferate too. So you might have a lot of elves anyway to just tap to activate. That doesn't create elves, but other cards like Lathrop do. So the really awesome thing is it because it has menace, it'll probably connect early, and then you'll be able to get at least 2 elves. That'll have 2 Maralen triggers, which you could get 4 cards exiled, and then choose from those 4 what you can play, right? And then if you want to be snarky and win through this other way, Intruder Alarm, etc., you can tap and untap 10 untapped elves to have each opponent lose 10 life, and then you gain 10 life. More creature token production. Bitter Blossom, classic card, still maintains some pretty good value despite being reprinted heavily. Just a great card to have, because you know, even if you don't want to keep, or let's just say the fairies that come out of this enchantment, they only benefit you in so many ways. They're a deterrent for people wanting to attack into you. They can block. They're flyers. So even if you lose 1 life during the upkeep, you're gonna get a creature that can save you from losing more life due to an unblocked creature, right? Bitter Bloombearer. I did not pull this. I decided to buy it because I wanted to complete the deck. And I got the alternate art version in foil. It's really cool. But it's your version of Bitter Blossom, except on a body. And it has Flash. So Flash actually ends up being key in the deck, as I mentioned earlier. But it'll also enable you to trigger a Leela, Cunning Conqueror, so that whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token. So you play its spell, any spell. During an opponent's turn, you get a fairy, which will trigger Maralen at least once. And so that's kind of what you want to go for. And then it also has this other trigger ability. Whenever 1 or more fairies you control deal combat damage to a player, go target creature that player controls. So goading is, this is not the win con of the deck, but I mentioned it wins. It primarily tries to win through combat damage. If you can prevent your opponents from attacking you because they are goaded, then that's that's essentially what you want to do, right? Now, this says one or more fairies you control do combat damage to a player. So you could have this happen essentially, trigger 3 times, and then you target each of one of the individual opponent's creatures. So you can't go to everything on one opponent's side, if that's what you're thinking. Token creation, Ona, Queen of the Fae. Again, enabled infinite exiling of libraries, etc., through Intruder Alarm and mana production, because you get fairies out of this as soon as you can hit a color that shares the color of one other card that has at least been exiled. So you get those fairies, which are really cool. Then we get into some protection type stuff or recursion. This is another Final Fantasy card, as Kiraga Magic, that was renamed from Heroic Intervention. Your permanents gain hexproof and indestructible. And then the elf version, except you can convoke and flash it in. Again, flash is great. Other permanents you control of the type of the creature type that you choose will gain hexproof and indestructible. So it sucks that he doesn't get indestructible and hexproof, but I mean he only essentially will serve one purpose. Now it's against recursion. Michiko the Unhollow. This is one of the other creatures that is not a fairy or elf. But what it does is, if those fairies or elves die, they can come back from undying and then trigger your Maralen. Bloodline bidding, kind of like your version of Patriarch's bidding, but you're looking at a single creature type. Right, Patriarch's bidding does something similar, but I think it's 6 mana. This is 8, but you can convoke, which is awesome. Now we get into the final discussion of lands. I always play 33 unless there's a need to go down or a need to go up. This is where I'm at. So we have our 2 forests, no big deal. We have 3 islands, and then 2 swamps. So the reason why there are only 2 forests and 2 swamps as opposed to the 3 islands is because I play Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. So they basically act as your swamp or forest command tower. Obviously your 3 color requirement, and that'll produce you one of any of those colors in the commander's color identity. Alchemist Refuge enables your flash, but this might be too little too late if you're trying to get certain things out early. Winding Canyons, I think this is a reserve list card. It's amazing. Does the same thing as Alchemist Refuge, except it only applies to creatures. And yeah, Alchemist Refuge and Winding Canyons, just so you know, when you activate, you can play whatever the types of cards that you can with what it says it can play at instant speed, so as if they had flash. Ancient Tomb, obviously it makes sense. Path to Ancestry, to be able to scry for Century creatures. Let me just read it. Enters battlefield tapped. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. When that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with their commander, square 1. So all your creatures, with the exception of Michiko and what is the other card? I forgot the other card. The other card that's not... Asrar Re-Rec. With the exception of those 2 cards, essentially, you'll almost always scry 1 with this card. That's awesome. Reliquary Tower, because of you're going to draw a lot of cards eventually. Or if you have not too many cards in hand anyway, this is just great utility regardless. Another organic card to the deck is to be able to loot, and you can do that through Agna Kayla from the Avatar set. Urza's Cave is great, and so I think I play this in exactly 4 decks. This wants to search out your Urborg, wants to search out your Cabal Coffers, wants to search out your Ancient Tomb, maybe maybe the Gaia's Cradle, whatever, which I'm about to reveal shortly. You have Mild Cradle of Growth. That's your basically third forest, but it hits your other lands and can create other forests too. Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, which pairs immediately well with your Cabal Coffers. Makes sense. 3-Tree City, tribal, typal, whatever it is that you want to look at. You're choosing a color, tapping it, tap to tap it, then add an amount of mana equal to the number of creature types you control, the creature of the chosen type. So you do this at you choose the color as you assess what is the total number of creatures that you have more of between elves or fairies. And so if you have more elves or fairies, you just want to choose the right creature type when it first comes in, right? I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but yeah, that's really what you want to do. Make the assessment, play certain cards early enough, have this out, and then if you have Masquerade Nexus, then it'll just tap for a lot more mana than originally intended. Then we're going into the tri-color or color enabling lands. Of course, you have to have your requisite soul type fetches, Misty Rainforest for your green-blue, Polluted Delta for your blue-black, your green-black for your Verdant Catacombs, and that's that. I guess I should have had Gaia's Cradle talked about earlier, but it's here, so what? It's cool, it's a judge foil, it's awesome. I love Gaia's Cradle. If you don't have it, pick it up. But be prepared to pay a pretty penny, right? Again, the tricolor lands. I can't say this enough about these lands. They originally printed in Battle Bond, I think, the original versions. So I think they were called Battle Lands or Battle Bond Lands or Bond Lands, I forget. But these are a must in every commander deck that has at least two colors. So Undergrowth Stadium for your green-black, Rejuvenating Springs for your green-blue, your Morphic Fold for your blue-black. And then now we get into the Shocklands. I liked some of the Galaxy foil EOE lands, and then also from Infinity, so I picked those up. I think they're great. Watery Grave for your blue-black, Overgrown Tomb for green-black, and then Breeding Pool for your green-blue. Now, it's important to note that if you wanted these Galaxy-type foils from Edge of Eternities, you're not going to get the full cycle of 10. So you have to compensate with buying a version of these Galaxy-type treatment from Infinity, which ends up being more expensive. So that's something you're going to have to look at. Zagoth Triome on its own, Swamp Forest Island, you could search it out very easily with the fetches or Skyshot Claim. And then as we usually end off the stream, we show off the dual lands, of course, your Underground Sea for blue-black, your Bayou for green-black, and then your green-blue for Tropical Island. I don't know if this part 2 exceeded my original expectation of building the deck, but also how long it does to actually take the time to talk about the deck. But I hope that was enough for you all to enjoy. We are at a point now where it's probably fine to transition to our playtesting. So I'm going to put that away for now. And if you missed the first part of the stream, I did showcase the Flusterstorm Altar, which I still have right here. I haven't packaged it up and put it into the party mail box. But we have that. It's going to go out in the mail tomorrow. The client's going to love it. Psylocke, really cool character. The foiling and the treatment that it was applied to this. It's just what we do really well. So if you like this type of stuff, give us a follow. Check out our page. And then shortly, I think next month, at the end of the next month, we're going to open back up for commissions. So that was the first part of the stream. Just doing a quick review of that, and then we can get into our playtesting portion. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And if you all have any questions about anything, feel free to put it in the chat or in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you. Okay, are we still recording? Are we still streaming? Are people still watching? I don't know. I don't care. We're just going to do this. So this part of the stream, part 3, is how I play test decks. And, you know, I used to do this thing actually where I have like 4 different decks. I'm at a table just kind of playing through as if it was a pod. If I can get to an LGS, I will. If I can't, I'm probably going to try to line up games on Spell Table with friends. You know, a lot of these folks are military guys that I played with throughout my years, and I just maintained these play groups from these different locations. Now, if I can't do either of those things, where one, I can go to an LGS, or 2, get on Spell Table, I want to still play test my decks, and I do that by using Moxfield, and I have a large screen to do it in where I can simulate a pod happening. So if this is something you're interested in doing, give it a shot, but you just need the requisite monitor area to be able to do this. So we promised to playtest Maralen. I think in a previous stream or 2, we were we were playing this also. And I didn't quite do the deck tech yet, but that's fine because I haven't gone through all the deck techs for all my decks, and we're going to do this kind of gradually. So we're going to playtest Maralen against 3 other decks. We can probably go with, let's say, Captain Sisay, which is really cool. Not the CDH Sisay, but your bracket 3, bracket 4 version. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, let's go back to Maralen and then see what kind of a deck it is. I'm pretty sure it's a bracket 4. I didn't like that hand, so I'm just going to redo it anyway. There are 4 game changers, which automatically puts it into the bracket 4 category. I think it's a low 4. It's probably a high 3. But the fact there are 4 game changers, if you recall, based off of the definitions, if it exceeds 3, then that's when you're in the bracket 4 category. If it's 3 from 1 to 3, you're in bracket 3. But then you also have to assess if it is that type of play style of the deck, if it really should be a 3 or 4. So something to look at. I think I'm fine with this Maralen hand. Let's give Captain Sisay a shot here. We have Skull Wreck and 2 lands. That's good. I guess we could play Deadpool. Deadpool's kind of interesting to stream, but we'll give it a shot anyway. Play test that. And then, you know, we'll play Iname Death Aspect. Because I spoke about Patriarch's Bidding in this in the stream earlier, and maybe if we see it, we could see the utility of that card in Iname, so we'll play that. Okay. How do we get this more interesting? Usually I like to play music in the background, so let's go ahead and do that. And what do you all want to hear? Usually I play Final Fantasy or maybe a little bit of Street Fighter. Maybe we'll turn out some Street Fighter here. Okay, what does this look like? I'm not sure that's good enough. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we have a Crypt Gas, only 1 swamp, Lake of the Dead. That might be playable. I have at least 4 lands, which is okay. Then we're gonna have to restart Deadpool. Soul Ring and a 1-9 hand. Treasonous Ogre. Okay, that might actually be playable. We're gonna proceed. Let's go ahead and roll this out, see what happens. Yeah, Maralen is just a cool deck. So rule of thumb, you know, you're probably wondering why I played the basic land. I think rule of thumb for me is for any deck, if I have a basic land in my hand, I'm going to play it first. Because I don't want to present the opportunity for someone to destroy a utility or a higher mana producing land right out the gate. A friend of mine that I play Spell Table with, he plays a Cranko deck, and he's done the thing where he uses Strip Mine turn 1 to kill off a land. Now Strip Mine hits any type of land, doesn't have to be a basic or a non-basic land. It can hit any land, but he's done that. I don't usually want to play better lands up front. Always rule of thumb is to play a basic land if you can get there. All right, this is cool. And you know, the end state of some of this playtesting is to find out how well your decks play against others. So how do you define that? You know, you got to keep track of it somewhere. And I have a spreadsheet that I go back to and fill out where I can actually assess win percentages. So we'll get to the end of the stream and I'll pull that up. Okay. Yeah, Aname, I care about spirits, so Cavern of Souls is going to name spirits, that's fine. Okay, now the shitty part about what happened here with Maralen is the mana that I have currently is only green and or blue producing. So what I'm gonna have to do probably is just get Fauna Shaman out so I can play a spell or discard a creature card to play to be able to look for a creature card in the library and to play that later that can produce black. Now, as of this point, it actually is fine for me to return a forest to my hand to generate more mana with Priest of Titania. So I'll go 3 here, untap it, return a forest to my hand. Because it's turn 3, I'll play that. So I have 3 mana already floating. Then I'll tap that for another 3. That's 6, 7. And I think it's fine. I'll just do Rex Sage and Vidalcan Orrery. It's probably okay for me to hit the Soul Ring, so I'll do that instead of the Sylvan Library. I might regret it later, though. Yeah, and sometimes you just have to be greedy on Sylvan Library. Because there's just great cards that you're pulling. You might as well just take full advantage of what you could get and then just suffer the consequences later. Oh. That one does not randomize. So it's probably okay to smack the Maralen player with Lord of Pain. Oh, I forgot to attack a treasonous ogre. I just need that black. That's all I need. Okay. No, I'm not gonna get Paradise Druid. This is just gonna make more sense if I did it this way. Elves of Deep Shadow. Tap that for a green. And then I'm gonna save up mana to play Banner of Kinship. And or even Eris Kiraga Magic. Midnight Banshee. I'm gonna look at this card really quick, because it probably went up in price. Yeah, it did. Only because of the elf deck, High Perfect Morcant, and probably the anti-Ool from Lorne Eclipsed. That's fine. Oh, actually, I don't need that. I think it would be better for me to untap that. Yeah, that's the way I want to play it. That's cool. +5, +5. Seven plus 7 is 14, plus 6 is 20. So that's 20 damage right there from just elves off the banner of kinship. Okay, so we kind of wasted a lot of time to bring out Captain Sisay, but I wanted to play 1,000-year elixir so I can just get the mana that I need. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the great thing about Captain Sisay is it can search for any permanent card. It doesn't have to be a creature card, legendary permanent card. Legendary card. Actually, doesn't even have to be a permanent. Okay. I mean, I think as far as some of this goes, there was probably some misplays. Like Captain Sisse probably didn't have to play out the mana rocks the way they did. There was a lot of stuff happening, and the Banner of Kinship was played, which meant that was going to spell trouble for everyone. Not much politicking going on, and Iname dealing the final blow to Captain Sisse deck probably was not necessarily a requirement, but I did that anyway. Because I'd probably just have Iname as a blocker, to be honest. Yeah, I think it's probably fine to attack. Attack like this. Probably everyone here. Six. Yeah. That's what happens. Okay, blockers at least with Undying, but probably would have made sense to counter Michiko. But Scourge Familiar is also a crazy target. Because I played Scourge Familiar first, that probably was bait. I think it would have been appropriate to counter Scourge Familiar instead. Yeah. Okay, but we do have... Oh, I had a Bitter Blossom trigger. God damn it. Forgot about that. Let's just do it the one time. And what have we got going on? There's no flyers. Nine plus... Oh, okay. So it makes sense to just attack with everyone. 9 automatically. And then we have 3 blockers. 1, 2, 3, which means I connect with 6, 7, plus 6, 13. Yep. Okay. So combat damage for the win. Banner of Kinship did it. That was good to go. Yeah. Alright, so that was playtesting. I think we only really have time for the one game. So we're going to go ahead and end it there. I hope that was interesting. Maralen played out exactly the way it needed to be. There might have been some misplays, and I don't like that to be the case for when I do playtesting. But, you know, it's okay because, you know, when you're doing streaming, you realize there's a little bit more that you have to think about in terms of what everyone is thinking, not just you. So there's that. All right. I think it's fine to do a quick wrap up with the closeout screen and get that going. All right, so thanks everyone for watching the stream. We started just a little shy of 2 hours ago, and the first part of the stream was highlighting the Flusterstorm altar done by Michiko, and it's a foil Flusterstorm that was hand painted in acrylics with foil embellishments on the card using the reference arts provided by the client of Psylocke from X-Men. So hope you like that. That was really cool. That's going in the mail tomorrow. And then we did the Maralen Fae Ascendant kind of deck reveal, deck tech. And then following that, we did the Maralen Fae Ascendant playtest against 3 other decks on Moxfield. So I think it was a cool stream. There was some really neat stuff that we had to display. And the deck tech, I think, hopefully that was good enough for everyone to figure out if this is a deck they want to build for Maralen. Definitely going after Elves, Faeries. You have the right mana package. You have the right combo opportunities through Intruder Alarm, Aluren, etc. They didn't quite get revealed during the playtesting, but we won through combat damage, which is at least the 70% way of winning, at least for the deck as far as that's concerned. Oh yeah, I forgot to show the spreadsheet for how I track the playtesting. So at least in a tangible aspect of playtesting, you have to figure out how well your deck plays against other decks. So let me go ahead and show that really quick so you can see what is actually happening with the data. So this is actually an ongoing project that has been going on for probably about 10 years or so. So it would suck if this particular file had to be deleted. But really how it works is I have all the different commanders. They're listed at the top, and then they're also listed in the leftmost column A, as you can see here. And every time I build a new deck, I just keep adding. So my latest deck that I built was Maralen. And so what it does is it assesses how much or how many times, or at least the percentage win rate that you can have for that deck against other decks. And these are only the decks that it plays against in terms of what I have. I don't use this spreadsheet for playtesting against other decks, but for this column here, column D, it's win percentage per pod. So Maralen has won a total of 27.9% of its games against all these noted commanders here, from Michiko all the way down to the last deck that I built before Maralen, which was Toph, the first metal airbender. So that's how that works. And then what it does is it also shows that for each leftmost column in A, if, say for example it's Michiko, it has played exactly 3 pods with Maralen and has won against Maralen exactly twice. And so these numbers are basically all iterated and iterative, so that if I can play as many times as I can against the decks that are pre-existing or brand new, then I just keep updating the numbers. So the number of pods that they were in against the said commander, and then how many games won against that. So right now Maralen has a 27.9% win rate, which probably puts it in the low 4, high 3 category. But the thing is as I build and improve my decks, some cards end up really making a difference in decks. So I noticed that if I increase the number of game changers in a deck, there's a good chance of it having a higher win rate. And then also if I'm looking at CDH style decks, for example, what I'm calling General Tazri, you're looking at a higher than 50% win rate against decks that are bracket 4 and below. So that's kind of how I assess that as well. If it's not 50%, it's teetering on 40% or higher to be close to CDH. But I think what really puts it into the CDH realm is if you can guarantee that it'll win more than half of the time against a lower bracket deck. I think as I build the decks, also just so everyone's aware, the first time I build it, they probably have a lower win percentage rate per pod, and so that may increase over time, and then it might kind of plateau out at somewhere in the ballpark of like 25% or higher, which means that it has a 1 in 4 chance of winning against similar type decks. But if it's playing against a CDH deck, the lower that rate goes down, and then it averages out. But it still probably plateaus at about 25% or more. I don't really recall how many times I've showed my deck ranking spreadsheet, but it is my way of capturing how well one of my decks plays against one of my other decks. If that is helpful to you, you can always reach out and I can help supply that. And then, if you're interested in any of the decks, also as I've been putting out, check out all my social media links, and you can find all my deck lists listed on Moxfield. Very cool. And with that, I think it's okay for us to close out completely and say farewell. Hope to see you all next time. Like and follow, and we'll get there. Thanks, everyone.